Okay, thank you very much. First, I would like to thank the organizers and also the audience, our Chinese friends, very dear friends, and my other Pakistani friends. I think because we have a limited time, so I will directly go to the issue. It is very challenging when two very learned speakers have already talked and when you come at a later stage. But I will see what I can do. I will start with 5 questions. Question 1, can CPEC lead to a win-win situation? Some people have already touched it, for both Pakistan and for China. Second, now someone said game changer, we should not use the word game changer. I will be a bit more bold and I will say yes, there is a possibility. Can CPEC help Pakistan to become a middle-income country in a decade or a little bit longer? And finally, fourthly, what kind of policies that one would have to follow to implement this? And finally, how and who ought to implement the CPEC? And I'm talking more, I will be taking more long-term perspective. I have 3 messages. First, China can save or earn over $100 billion per annum. Second, Pakistan can become a middle-income country, which I've already touched upon, in 10 years, possibly. Now, Hafiz has already mentioned a little bit about the indicators, but I think presently we know that I have taken the consistent data, so 14, but now it's $1,600 for Pakistan, and look at China, close to $9,000 or $8,000. This is the current, but what is more important is the past. Pakistan's per capita income until 1990, it was $480, and look at China's per capita income, $345, not very long ago. And if you go even back further, it was Pakistan was almost twice as China's per capita income. Not very long ago, this was the situation of China. And look what today China is, and it has become the 2nd largest economy in the world. Okay, before I have to provide some historical perspective. Some of my learned panelists have already touched upon, but there are at least 4 that I would like to very briefly. One is the invasion. Since the antiquity, whether it's a Greek, Roman, Islamic, Mongols, Ottoman Empire, they went and outright they invaded. Then came the colonization in the 14th century and onwards. And then the military bases, we all know it. The 100 military bases. Now, all 3 of them were not very much appreciated where it happened. And we know that in the subcontinent, when the British arrived, the share was almost 24% of the GDP. When they left, that share went down to 2%. Now, the current initiative, the CPEC initiative, which is a part of One Belt, One Road, as my previous speaker has already mentioned, and it is based on this win-win Confucius philosophy. It's like a golden goose. If you have a golden goose, do not eat the goose, eat eggs. So they always go for a win-win situation. Now, I will very quickly go through it. CPEC that we, Okay. CPEC is a part of One Belt, One Road initiative. Secondly, OBOR, or the One Belt, One Road, is basically this idea of win-win. It addresses the regional connectivity of over 63 countries to meet the infrastructure gap. And it is in the Asia and the Pacific, Central Asia, Eastern Europe. And then it follows that old Silk Route and also covers the maritime route as well. So basic idea is to accelerate the growth based on the connectivity of these countries. And it is the largest infrastructure project covering almost 65% of the world population and 45% of the global GDP. Now, why China opted for this One Belt, One Initiative strategy? Because after 3 decades of their rapid, Hafiz already mentioned that they grew at a phenomenal rate. Now they have completed the infrastructure, at least on the eastern and central part. Western part, they are still doing it. They have surplus capital, both physical as well as financial. Their surplus excess reserve is over $3 trillion. They have physical steel, infrastructure material, and more importantly, they have a trained labor force, which can help the other countries. Now, let's come to the CPEC. What it entails, what is China's interest in CPEC? Could CPEC become again the game changer issue? Now, CPEC, as has been mentioned, it's from Kashgar to Gwadar, and it deals with the highways, railways, pipeline, energy projects, and so on. And the amount we all know, it can go as high as 75. Of course, that remains to be seen. Now, the basic issue here is that how China is going to benefit. You look at China's import of oil. China imports over 8 million barrels a day. It is even more than the United States. And in terms of dollar and cents, they are importing over $100 billion of oil. Now, and where the oil is coming from, there are 3 routes. Yes, from the north, then in the south, and through Malacca Strait and South China Sea. These are, if you look at the map, in terms of the distance, currently is over 13,000 kilometers. If it comes from Kashgar, the distance will reduce to 2,500. Now, in terms of China's savings, as I mentioned earlier, over 100 billion, the calculation is very simple. China's total import is about over $1 trillion, exports over $2 trillion. If China can do an import cost saving of 5% because of the oil, can make, and if you add the number, the number will be about over $100 billion. So China is going to gain out of this CPEC initiative when it comes to fruition. Now, how Pakistan is going to make benefit out of that? My previous speakers have already mentioned that. But of course, royalty, trade, there will be an access to the $12 trillion at the moment economy, 12 to 13 trillion. And in the very near future, China will become the largest economy in the world. So Pakistan can benefit out of that. Extraction of large mineral deposits that Pakistan has. Tourism, I think nobody talks about tourism. Thailand makes over $50 to $60 billion a year. And what they have to offer. Pakistan's northern part, if infrastructure and highways and all these things are built, Pakistan makes tremendous amount of resources, money out of this. And then, of course, the job creation and so on. Now, last 2-3 slides, I want to finish it quickly. What I did to see Pakistan's benefit, that when China, how long China took, the current GDP of $1,600, and how many years it took China to become the middle income country of $5,000. I think my calculation shows that they grew at 15% plus. If we take, let's say we cannot grow at 15%, if we grow at 8 to 9% because of the CPEC and other opportunities, I have shown some of the forecasts that the optimistic forecast, if you grow at 12%, in 6, 7 years, you can achieve that. If you are less optimistic, 8 to 10%, I can easily show that by 2030, Pakistan can achieve that status of middle-income country. And we can see that how Pakistan can become, in the next 20, 30 years, 16th largest economy in the world. Now, what is needed to be done? I'm going to go to very quickly. I have presented this in other conference. Peace and stability. Average, educated, disciplined, skilled labor force at a mass scale. Enabling institutions and policies. Rule of law. Business-friendly policies. Some of it has already been discussed. Good governance. And finally, to begin with modest infrastructure. Water, electricity, these are some of the keys. And the road from farm to the market, from factory to the port. Now, who is going to do it? Again, 4 things. Number 1, you need the leadership. Number 2, you need the leadership. Number 3, you need the leadership. And number 4, you need core group of talented, competent people to support the leadership. And finally, Mr. Chairman, I would like to share, I have shared this thing, the quality of the leadership. Number 1, the leader has to be exceptionally intelligent, not PhDs, not rocket scientists, high IQ level. The leader has to be highly visionary. Leader should not only think about what's going to happen today or tomorrow. No, leader should think about 20, 30, 50 years. Dr. Mahathir in the 80s had Vision 2020, 50 years plan. We may not be there, but our future generation will be there. A great leader, talks about the next election. A great leader talks about the future generation. And number 3, the leader has to be fiercely independent. Fiercely independent, will not compromise. And finally, the leader has to be brutally honest. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I hope that if these things can be followed, I can assure you Pakistan can become a middle-income country. Thank you.